Happy Friday, everyone. We want to welcome you to the Citizens Advisory Podcast presented by the Citizens Advisory of Pennsylvania. I'm Jess Stallnecker, Executive Director. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Stacey Adams. I'm so glad to have you here with me, Stacey. Thank you for being here. Let me tell you a little bit about Stacey. She is a working mom of 2 children. And like many of us, when COVID hit, kind of started to dig into educational agendas. I think COVID exposed a lot of issues with the public school system, and her eyes were open to the direction that public school was headed, and so she decided to make the change to homeschool. And just as an advisory, right? We call ourselves Citizens Advisory. As an advisory, I think it's really important to share all different options with parents because not everyone's family situation is the same. So not everyone is able to pull their kids right now. And we don't think that um, you know, we should stop the fight at the local school level. But sometimes it gets to the point where homeschooling has to be considered. And so I would love to talk a little bit about how you came to that decision. And yeah, just a little bit about homeschooling in general and give some advice and some encouragement to parents who might be on the brink of making a big educational decision for their families. So Stacey, I am so glad you're here with us, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your family dynamic.
Sure. My kids are 15 and soon to be 13. So we began the homeschool journey about a year ago. When COVID happened, I was one of those parents with the masking, and I was at the school board meetings talking. And my kids stood up in school, actually. They tried to stand up for their rights, their medical rights, and their freedom to be able to choose what they can put on their face and not. And I saw the school district reacted to them, threatened, intimidated, harassed. It came to the point where my daughter, who's a straight A student, National Junior Honor Society, was definitely a part of the school. They threatened her with in-school suspension for violating the handbook and not following essentially orders. And I said, well, sure, show me where that is in the handbook, and I can agree with you, but it's nowhere in the handbook. So it just came to a point where it wasn't fair to my kids to have to fight that every day. They just want to be kids and learn. So we decided to pull them. I put them in cyber school. And through that process for that year, man, my eyes were open with cyber school curriculum. If you really want a bird's eye view of what's really going on in the indoctrination, just the CRT stuff, the sexuality component to it, it really even made me dig further into looking at homeschool. So we decided, go ahead, you're going
No,
to.
I was going to ask, what did you use the school cyber program?
No.
Okay.
So we actually did for a week. I used the school districts, and it was a joke. My kids went from straight A students to like F's, and I was like, what's going on? So I actually sat down and did a lesson with them. And I went to try to look at the test after. I couldn't even get the answers. I was like, they never even talked about this stuff. So it was a week. And then I put them in CCA, which is Commonwealth Charter Academy, which I know Ed Brune, he's very much on CCA and their money, and there's really no oversight and where the money's flowing into there. And it gives a great alternative for parents who don't want them in school and can really oversee their education, but it's still in there, and it's still it's in your face, and it's in your kids' face every day. And again, my biggest reason is not necessarily the agendas as far as CRT or the gender ideology. It's more of the data mining. And the more I dug into research, I realized that the data mining is really the biggest thing that really scared me for my kids, the reason why I pulled them to homeschool. Because we don't know where that information is going. And you read into educational agendas, they talk about AI eventually teaching our kids, and the teachers will just be there to monitor to make sure they're not cheating. The access teachers can have to the kids' video cameras at any time. They say they don't, but I mean, come on, there's somebody that's going to take advantage of that.
Right.
Just even the career placements, they're starting in kindergarten with programs like World of Work that determine in kindergarten, your strengths and weaknesses to where you're going to be when you graduate. So whether you're going to be in college or you're going to go to have a labor job. But that's where it was heading. And I didn't want that. I wanted my kids to have the freedom to explore different careers, to explore what they liked, what they didn't like, to change their minds a bunch of times, because that's how they learn. That's how
Mhm.
they learn who they are. And I didn't want them graduating and saying, "Oh, I'm going to be an engineer," because they tested really strong in math.
Right.
So it influenced their whole career. So they even talk about in educational agendas that our kids are human capital. So
Yep.
it's disturbing to hear that they're going to use our children to profit off of as
Mhm.
adults. And if anybody's ever read 1984, I mean, it's pretty much spot on to what's happening today,
Yeah,
and
we're
scary.
in it.
Scary.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So I mean, that's not an easy decision to make, but I will say, and I pulled some data on homeschooling. You know, it is the fastest growing education form in the US right now, and I believe that COVID had a lot to do with that.
Hmm.
Again, like I said, I think our eyes were open to a lot more than just masks and, COVID related issues. I think
Hmm.
we all had kids home, on virtual school. Um, and then, of course, the ESSER funds come down the pike, and we know that they're earmarked for things that probably are not aligned with many of what, many of us believe is good for our children.
Hmm.
So, we know that this is, there's a reason that homeschooling is kind of skyrocketing right now. A couple of different, we'll talk more about, a couple of different conceptions, but what were your biggest concerns in terms of like, I know I personally feel like I was a teacher for 18 years. I was a high school biology teacher, and I still sometimes feel like I'm ill equipped to be able to walk my kids through homeschool if that ever becomes something we have to seriously consider.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, my daughter's in 10th grade. She's taking pre-calculus, AP pre-calculus. And I'm like, I have no clue what you're doing. But I will say, when I was going, that was my biggest fear, was not being able to teach my kids and have them at an academic level that I know they're capable of.
Right.
So through my research and through my connections, I found a group called a one-room schoolhouse. And that really is just why we're at where we're at, because I'm not quite sure if we didn't find that, if I'd be able to homeschool.
Right.
Um, yeah, so the one room schoolhouse is a hybrid program. So if
Okay.
you can imagine kind of public school, private school, and homeschool all mixed into one, that's a good way that I feel like I can describe it. So you still have the woman who runs the schoolhouse. There's 4 campuses. Uh, she was a high school calculus teacher. She has so many degrees and licensing. Just one of those women that you just admire, because she knows it all and has it all, and
Amazing.
she can implement it.
Yes.
So she created that system. But that's a big one, is that I was very much afraid of not being able to teach my kids, because they are older. If I
Yeah.
started this when they were kindergarten, it might be a whole different story. But I will say, I
Well,
definitely learn a lot with them.
my son was, virtual kindergarten. He was a kindergartner during the time where all the schools
Mhm.
were shut down. And I'm telling you, I was like, I don't know how to teach this kid how to read. Like, I have no
Right,
idea. I've never, I could teach him biology, but I can't teach him how to read. So
right.
I think we all feel that way about different, we're not experts in every single subject. So what
No.
does like a day of schooling for your kids look like in this hybrid program?
So on Mondays and Fridays, they're home with me. So Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, they go to the school. Um, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it's they have their math, ELA, science, history, and then Thursdays they have their electives. So they have ed gym class, they have art, music, Spanish. There's everything that you pretty much could be offered in a public school is
Mhm.
offered here. So, which is great, because you don't feel like you're losing out on anything, and
Right.
it's nice because it's in one nice package in one spot. So I do know other people that homeschool that they go to different groups to get what they need, which is
Right.
great. And that where we were talking about, we're afraid because we might not be able to teach our kids. They have so many options out now, more so than 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go on Facebook and connect with a homeschool group and say, hey, I need help in high school chemistry. And then you have a parent that's willing to step in and help you.
Right.
So it's a great community to be part of.
Mm.
People are always willing to lend a hand and to welcome you to a new group. So I definitely, the resources are completely out there for parents to tap into. You just have to ask yourself, it, it's more work for me as a parent. I work, I have to cook, I have to drive them everywhere. It's a lot of extra work, but is it worth it for your kid? So you
Right.
have to really weigh that out. And homeschool might not be right for every kid, or every parent, but
Mhm.
it's definitely an option out there that if you're sick of the public school system and you can't afford private school, this is a great alternative. So,
Yeah. So you said that she has 4 campuses, this woman who
mhm.
runs this. Are they all in like they're all in Pennsylvania, I assume?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so how could parents is there a website they can go to just
Hmm.
to find out more? I mean, we'll talk more
Absolutely.
about homeschool in general, but I think it's really important while we're on this topic and this hybrid program that you found, because I think it's attractive to many of us who are just thinking that homeschool means that your kids are going to be home with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you're responsible for teaching them everything, you know? So,
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's great because it's a drop off. So I drop them off 3 days a week. They go and they do their work. They hang with their friends there. They go and have fun. And even in the winters, they were sled riding on their break.
that's
Like
great.
they're outside, sun, rain, snow. They are outside. They're in the woods. There's a nature survival class. They learn how to homestead.
Oh,
Like
that's
those are
awesome.
electives. Yeah, it gives such a well-rounded educational experience that I always tell people if you could just experience it for one day, your mind would be changed. So
Yeah.
whatever she has, the magic formula. Her name's Genevieve. She has this magic formula that is just working. But so the website that you can go to find out more information is a one room schoolhouse.com. So
Okay.
it's a letter A one room schoolhouse.com. And there's you can even donate. So her goal is to keep expanding. So even if people want to donate, they can do that. So each campus might be a different, like the campus we go through is K through 8. There's
Okay.
20 kids in each group, 60 kids to each campus. So it's not like something that's small, like 10 kids. Like they have a
Right.
big group. Yeah. So, and, they have programs where the older kids read to the little kids. So they do buddy
That's
time.
great. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's more like a community
Yeah.
than you feel like it's a school. But my daughter is planning on going to starting college classes her junior year, and the woman who runs the program, she's messaging me at like 5 a.m. Hey, I think these are great colleges for like very very much invested in each kid, which is a great thing to have, and
Yes.
and parents have access. So you do have a volunteer commitment. I think there is a buyout option, but you have to volunteer,
Mhm.
and you're so involved with your kids, and the closeness you have now with your kids is so different.
Yeah.
And it's great. I will never regret this time that I have extra, especially them being teenagers.
Yes.
I'll never regret that extra time with them. And yeah, I just, like I said, she has something so special, and that I would love to see this pop up in almost every school district to give parents an alternative. But obviously, can't do that without the funding. So,
Right.
yeah, so they do fundraisers and they do that kind of stuff to try to raise their own money.
But it
But it'd
sounds
be
like a
great.
great place to donate.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
It's because I know so many parents that want to do it, but the locations is just too far. I drive over an hour to go there 3 days a week,
Okay.
because that's how much I love this program. To me, it's
Yeah.
worth it. And it's
Yeah.
affordable. Tuition's affordable. If you can't afford all 3 days, you can just do Thursdays if you need the electives.
Right.
Super flexible in that way. Um, it's such a great resource that I feel extremely blessed that we got in at the very early stages of it, because I have a feeling this is going to get a lot bigger. So
It sounds like it might.
yeah.
And I think it addresses a lot of the misconceptions or myths that surround homeschools that,
Mhm.
you're going to have a lack of socialization. your kids are gonna be weird. Like, I mean, those are things that literally people say all the time about
Yeah.
homeschooling. So, it sounds like this even addresses that. But even if not, I know, like, if we don't do a one-room schoolhouse program, we still have I know my neighbor homeschools, and they have co-ops and groups that they meet up with, and they do field trips together. And,
Hmm.
so I know that it's not what people make it out to be.
No, and it's all about the parent, right? It's all about the family. So you have to make a little more of an effort maybe to socialize your kids, probably. But I mean, you're doing it for your child, and you're
Right.
doing it for them to have, a great future in whatever they decide to do. Like my kids play sports, my daughter plays cello. Like we still are completely involved in all of that. And I know parents, like you said, they go to different co-ops. There's different groups, and literally you just go on Facebook 2 seconds, you can find in your area probably a homeschool group to connect with.
Right.
And yeah, socialization. Who says being social has to be in school for 8 hours a day?
Right.
I mean, what kind of social concepts are they learning? I mean, how many fights are there every day in schools? And I mean, I'm talking more middle and high school, but there's fights, there's drugs, there's weapons, there's,
Right.
you know, they have to be still for 8 hours sitting in a desk. Like you know, it's just, it's very, it's a very different atmosphere when you go to homeschool, and it's freeing, and it can be scary. It can definitely be scary and not quite sure where to start. But if you find good mentors and good people that have been doing it for a long time, and once you jump into these groups, you'll find them pretty easy.
Yeah.
They're usually, and they're always available. And there's groups like Homeschool Defense League Association. They're a lawyer group that you pay $12 a month, so they can help you file your necessary affidavits for homeschooling, help you with evaluations. If school ever comes back at you and says, hey, you didn't send in the right paperwork, but you did, they're there to communicate with the school as lawyers and,
Amazing.
kind of shut them up a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do find the right groups once you dive in. Again, it's overwhelming. Trust me, I was very much overwhelmed buying all the books, and you do
Mhm.
have to pay for the curriculum, which I want to say I just bought mine, and I want to say it was just under 1,000 for both my kids for all
Okay.
their books, supplies, and everything. So and the tuition is pretty cheap. So um it's like, you go to a private school, you're gonna pay what, $10,000 a
At
year?
least. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're talking for all 3 days it's 2,000.
Mhm.
So that's for the whole year. And
The
now
whole
the teachers are paid, so they make sure that they're credited teachers or they have the experience. Um, so they definitely make sure you're not getting, just some mom off the street or some dad off the street that has no idea what they're doing. They
right.
either have some type of teaching experience, they've been homeschool moms for a long, long time. So they're very well versed in that field, which is great too, because then you feel more comfortable, and Mondays and Fridays, my kids just continue in their workbooks. If they have questions, you can just wait till Tuesday if I can't help them. So there's no testing as far as like assessment testing. Um, there's no data tracking. Everything's mostly pencil and paper. They do have
Mhm.
access. They can bring their own devices in high school and sometimes middle school. But it's just to look things up. Like there's
Right.
obviously not a lot of just have it for fun. No phones. Their phones go in a basket every morning,
Hmm.
so they're not distracted. It's literally bringing their childhood back to them, which is great. And even my son got hurt one day, and she calls me or messages me and lets me know. And I said, "Oh, can I come up?" She said, "Sure." I walked right up, make sure my son was okay.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have to answer to anybody. And, that was a big fear of mine is in schools, filling out all that information for sports and, even for the nurse. And, they're bringing in these school based health centers where they're going to see your child on site without a parent present.
Mm.
And they're starting to really push for that. And
We're
it's
seeing it pop up
growing.
everywhere. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's scary too. I mean, your teenager could get birth control from the doctor's office inside the school district,
Right.
or your kid can be saying, "Oh, I feel a different way about the way my body is," and all of a sudden they're talking to them about transitioning, and they're making there's laws at 5 MPA at 13. You're limited now on what happens in those doctor's offices. So it's
And at
definitely
14 in
it's,
PA, that's the age of consent, right? So at 14 years old, which my daughter turns 14 this weekend, like she's able to make those decisions
mhm.
in this
Yeah,
state.
yeah. I think vaccines, they can decide to have a vaccine at 14. I
Yeah.
think in PA.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I know my son is turning 13 next month, and I'm already getting the emails saying, I have limited access now to his medical information unless he gives me permission. I'm like, who pays the bill?
Right,
Right?
right,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
So yeah, so it's definitely it's all that combined, it's definitely a great option. And even if you want to start your own hybrid program,
Right.
I'm sure if you reached out to the organization, to the one room schoolhouse, more than happy to help. And like I said, if you want her to take it on, donations, 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 donations for her to make this grow bigger. And I definitely would love to see this everywhere. I think people would just, it would go by, it would just take off so fast.
I think so because again, I think that it's addressing a lot of the things that the misconceptions people have about homeschool to begin with. Real quick, I want to talk a
Mhm,
little bit about the academic side of things and the rigor because a lot of
mhm.
times too, we're trained or we're trained to believe that you have to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day to learn, basic arithmetic, math, reading, all those things. And it's just not true. So but at the same time, people think that like, well, you're not sitting at a desk 8 hours a day. So how could you be getting the academic rigor that you're getting in the public school system? However, I read a statistic that said that um homeschool students outperform institutional school students academically. So let's talk a little bit about that because I think that that's another big thing. Parents are like, it's not rigorous enough. I can't do that. So
Yeah. Well, and that's like, if you're not going to go the one room schoolhouse route and you decide to homeschool on your own, that's obviously up to the parent. Like,
right,
how rigorous do you want this for your child? Well, the greatest thing is now we hear the buzzword personalized learning all through the educational agendas. It's
mhm,
personalized learning. Well, their personalized learning is to, again, data mine your kid in order to maximize the most profit off of them. True personalized learning is homeschool, and they're trying to sell you the idea of it, but
right.
it's not the same thing as
Mm,
homeschool.
no,
So, for instance, you have two kids, same grade, same age. One is more advanced in math and one is not. Well, they're not in a classroom of 30 kids that are, they have to either keep up or they're not challenged enough. You
right.
work to your abilities and you challenge yourself. So you don't have to compete against 30 other kids in a classroom, 20 other kids. So and everything's offered. For instance, my daughter has an interest in forensic science. Well, there's forensic science courses out there that I can go ahead and pick up for her that
Mhm.
cost a little bit extra, but can be taught. Like I said, she's on the AP track, so all her classes last year she finished with a 4.2. Like, we still have to do transcripts in high school, so you're still getting all of that academic rigor that you would think that only public school could offer or private school could offer.
Right.
It's the resources are out there, and you just have to go after and get them. But a one room schoolhouse offers all of that. So, for instance, there's my son is he's not a great reader.
Mhm.
He can read, but
Yeah.
being in homeschool, he advanced two grade levels, and he
Amazing.
would have never done that in public school. So it's just that there was no pressure for him to have to complete something. There was no
Right.
pressure for them to have to move forward when they don't get it. They can stay on something until they get it. So there's really no, and once they get it, that gives them the confidence to move on and get it, make it easier for them in the future to get things
Absolutely. I mean,
and to understand.
because I taught for 18 years in the public school system, and it just seemed like my classes were just growing in number every
Hmm.
single year. It's like, we would start with 25, and then by the time, 2 years would pass, it's 28, and then it's 32. And like, you're teaching a course like biology where, kids are gonna have a hard time grasping some of these more complex, topics.
Hmm.
And like, you don't have time to, sure, they can come to you during a study hall, they can come to you during a free period or something, but like you don't really have time in the day-to-day activities to spend time with just one or two kids, and then the other ones are sitting there waiting for you. So
Well,
it
and you have to answer to administration as well. So not only
absolutely.
you're trying to teach these kids, but you have to answer to the big guy to, let him know you're actually doing the work. And then now they're making you jump through all these hoops and tracking kids' emotions in schools and things
Uh,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, we've got
So
apps. We have, the teachers have apps they have to have the kids log into, and it's just, or they have to take this survey and that survey, and we're taking away, and then the state testing, right? They spend 2 weeks on state at least. I mean, this amount of testing my kids did last year, I'm like, you are losing so much academic time just to perform the state standard tests. Like,
yep.
so I just, I can see all of this as a former educator. I can see it as a mom, how this could be really a fantastic option. And I'm so glad that we have been able to go over some of this stuff because um again, we're fighting back. We will not ever stop fighting back against these local school boards and against the
No, don't
agenda.
ever stop. Yeah.
Never stop.
Mhm.
But at some point in time, you might have to make that decision for your family. And so, and for your kids. And so I am so grateful that you've given us, some insight into what that could look like. And that it's not, the
It's not
typical,
like the
it's
1975
not
where,
Little House
the
on the
kids,
Prairie.
yeah. Yeah, no. No, and again, even if you don't choose a place like a one-room schoolhouse or, there's not that option for you, you don't have to. It's all about how any situation, right? You become self-reliant and self-sufficient in it, right?
Right.
So either you can be complacent in just doing the bare minimum, or you can really give your kids a great experience and a great life of growing up and, being social, having the academics, that can challenge them. In fact, the one room schoolhouse just had a graduate at 16 this past year.
Wow.
So she graduated and she's starting college next year.
Amazing.
So it's possible to do this for our kids. Is it scary? Yes. Is it overwhelming? Yes. I mean, I'm not going to lie. My head was spinning last summer trying to get this
Of
all
course.
organized, but I'm so glad I did. And I really wish I would have started this when they were a lot younger.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be a definitely, it would have been a good decision if I did this a couple years ago. So,
So I
but
have one
again,
more
yeah,
question
yeah, go ahead.
because I think that this is another one, especially,
Mhm,
my kids are super into sports. I mean, you said your kids are also athletes. So what
mhm.
does that look like for you guys now? Are they able to play for the school, or do you have them in programs elsewhere?
So yeah, you're still able to have them play in school. You still pay tax dollars.
Yeah.
So again, this is something like if you can read the homeschool laws. They're pretty clear. They're really not hard to follow. You can also go to the Homeschool Defense League HSDLA is what it's called, and you can go to them and ask them. They have lawyers in every state that handle this. But in PA, absolutely. If you need their iPad, yep, you can go get their iPad. If you need books from the school district, they have to provide them to you. You want to be part of their clubs, you have to be allowed to be
Okay.
participating in them. Now, if you want to do sports, yes, you can. You still have to transport your own kids, so they won't be
Right.
allowed to ride the bus or do that kind of stuff. But absolutely, we have kids at the schoolhouse that still participate in their school sports,
Okay.
um, for their district. Again, and my thing is when you do that, and my whole thing is the data mining and the
Yeah.
school-based health centers, you do have to fill out all that information for PIAA,
Sure.
and
Mhm.
which is a little like I don't really want to do that, but to still give your kid that option. Absolutely, you can still do. You have access. They want to go to prom, they can still go to prom.
Right.
Anything that the school district, in fact, the school districts are supposed to give you all of this information. So even though you're homeschool, you're still a taxpayer. So, and you're still school age kids. So they actually have to give you all of that, um, to, let you know what's going on in the district, as far as, any events coming up or anything that they would be able to participate in.
Right.
That's by law. That's in the PA state law. So, which is really great. I won't, most of them probably don't do it, but if
Mhm.
you have a question, call and they try to deny you, nope, you say, I know my rights, and I know my kids
Yeah,
a lot of participate. Yeah, but even the homeschool, they had a prom last year. All the homeschool groups in our area, they hosted a prom. It was 120 kids showed up
that's
in high
awesome.
school ages. Yeah, it was great. And like I said, it's not your typical. They want you to think homeschool is bad. Your kid's going to be in a corner. He's going to be so pale because he's never
Right.
going to go outside. They really want you. They really want that idea into people's heads, and it's
Mhm.
nothing like that.
No.
It's really not. Yeah.
I see it all the time. I mean, like I said, my neighbor homeschools and her kids are outside all the time. Like,
Yeah.
they'll switch off. One will go in for a lesson, one will come outside, and when my kids were home for virtual school, our teachers would give them a break to go outside or whatever if it was
Hmm.
a snowy day. And I was like, this is kind of cool. Like they get to be kids in the middle of the school day, which is pretty awesome. And so, our neighbors would come across the street. They became real close with our neighbors. And then when my kids went back to school, they were so bummed because
Yeah.
they missed out on all of that.
They're
So
stuck inside. Yeah, they're stuck inside a building. They have to ask to go to the bathroom. Like you don't have to do any of that when you're homeschooling,
right.
and that's like the benefits, the pros of homeschooling. I think definitely outweigh some of the cons, and even the cons you can turn into pros if
Right.
you go about it the right way and you put the effort behind it.
True.
But yeah, it's great. I mean, my kids learned how to build shelters in the woods. They learned, how to um, work with each other and do like first aid. Like they were learning that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's way more hands on, and the parent involvement. Like if you feel like you're disconnected from your kid or the school system's pulling them more away from you, this is a great option to get that relationship back. I always say the hour drive that we have going there is great because it's just my kids and we just talk.
Yeah.
And I know I'll never, if we were in public school, I would never have that. I would never
Right.
have that with them. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
great.
I know what it's like here in the mornings. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, get ready. Okay, out the door. Bye. We'll see
Yeah.
you in 2 hours.
Yeah. See you later. Yeah. And this is great for working parents. So
Yeah.
the option to do the hybrid, you can still have your job, you can still work. You're not that,
Yeah.
you don't feel like and as far as the teaching goes, if you find the right group of people, and you're motivated enough to do it for your kids, anything's really you don't realize how much smarter you actually are as a parent
Yeah.
until you start doing this. And in fact, I've learned stuff. I've been in their class volunteering, and I'm like, I have a question.
Mhm. I'm
So it's
sure.
and it's an amazing sense of community, and like-minded individuals, and it's Christian based, so it's not, but they don't do, they pray every morning and they do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mhm.
But beyond that, there's no, it's not too churchy for people, because I know sometimes people say, oh, I don't want to do a private Christian school because I don't want them doing this or that.
Right.
Um, but it still gives you that sense of you have to work together. You
Mhm.
have to, have that sense of pride in your work,
Mhm.
sense of pride in your country, and, your belief in God that this is, where you should be, and take that with you into your future. So,
I
yeah,
love that
it's
so
great.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so well, I mean, you've given me a lot to think about, I can tell you that. And I think you've done, I was gonna ask you to give some encouragement, but I think you just did. I mean,
Mhm.
really, I think a lot of times we sell ourselves short or we start to kind of fall for the mainstream narrative of what this could look like or this does look like. But really, I mean, I've personally seen it with my neighbors. I actually have more than one neighbor that homeschools. My neighborhood is a big homeschool neighborhood.
That's awesome.
Um,
Oh, they should start a one-room schoolhouse.
I know. So I'm going to have to go to those resources that you shared. In fact, what I'll do is once we stop recording, Stacey, we will go ahead and you can give me those websites and we'll put them
Mhm.
in the show notes. We'll put them in the description so that people can
Awesome.
access those resources. And like you said, potentially even donate to this organization because it sounds phenomenal. It sounds like, over the next few years, we may need, these options to be available
Mhm.
to us. I know I'm telling you, during that time of virtual schooling for my kids, I was like, I wish I had another option. Like, I don't know what to do. So, this is such a good resource. This is hopefully this you find this podcast valuable if you're listening because personally I do. I think that this is such good information. So, Once again, Stacey, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, we'll put the resources in the show notes, but please check us out on our website at citizensadvisorypa.com. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter, Citizens Advisory of PA. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're enjoying these podcasts. And of course, like and share this one with someone you know who might need what we talked about today, because it's such an important topic, and it's so good to have options. So, Stacey, thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you for having me.